Okay, let's talk about the D word, death. Something we're all going to have to face one of these days, some sooner than others. No guarantee any of us are going to be here next week or tomorrow. And, you know, if an asteroid hits the Earth, we're all gone. But it should be something that is discussed from a perspective, number one, that it is nothing to fear, the actual transition. And I really think most people are not afraid of the actual transition we call death, because the souls have told me it's like walking from one room to the next. I think they're more afraid of the circumstances which could lead up to it. You know, nobody wants to die from an agonizing cancer or, you know, murdered or anything of, you know, this tragic nature. But I think another thing I have to also consider about death and the hereafter is, you know, we have the impression that it's all, you know, peaches and cream environment. It is, but for some souls, it may not be. You don't just pass on and go over there and suddenly, I understand everything from nuclear physics to, you know, to how to jump through a hoop. There's still the opportunity of learning or gaining. There's some people probably viewing right now that believe St. Peter's going to meet them at the pearly gates. Well, I've been told that's not the case. There could be somebody who goes over that has strong Christian fundamentalist views and think, you know, I'll spend the rest of eternity in front of Jesus and, you know, say praise the Lord all day. Not the case. There's the atheists who will feel they'll just fade into nothingness. And even the near-death experience, which I do think they have a good argument about, is nature's way of, you know, preparing us for ultimately the transition. Maybe yes, maybe no. Myself, as I've said before, I definitely have my agnostic days. I can't prove what happens to me is the real McCoy, but on the other hand, I haven't found it to be disproven also. So sometimes, you know, an individual soul can go over there and they're not exactly, you know, happy and tickled pink. They can go over and feel their life was cut short, you know, by illness or some other circumstance. They could have had a very happy, loving marriage and relationship here and family, and they feel they're taken away from them in the physical sense, which also brings me to say that as much as they say to us they're closer to us than we can imagine, I always tell people, don't feel bad if you don't get it, because I don't get it either. It's just, you still would rather have the person or the pet here in the physical sense. Just like my little boy is sitting here behind me on the couch, purring up a storm. I certainly don't want him to pass on into the next stage. But the thing is, I know one of these days it's going to happen. One of us is going to go first, either him or me. I hope it would be him, so I wouldn't have to worry about him. But there are people who, you know, go over there thinking first they're dreaming. They may become a bit unnerved that they see a relative that wasn't very nice to them when they were here on the earth, and even if they've changed, it could take them some time to feel comfortable about that. There's, in the sessions that I do, there's so much, each one is uniquely different. There's so much of variation. There's what I call the really normal session, where, the skeptic could say, well, what you're saying anybody could say. But as the souls over there would say, we can't create a horror story to make the session more believable. For example, a young lady I had done a session via phone recently who lives up in Canada. I mean, even I said to her, you don't know how, I hope you realize how lucky you and your family are, because they grew up in a very loving, healthy environment. Loving parents toward each other, loving parents to the children, closest with siblings. To me, growing up in a more or less dysfunctional home, that's kind of foreign sounding. It's a bit hard to believe, even though, my father was not, I've had people there, their father was an alcoholic and he beat the you-know-what out of them. My father wasn't like that. He was a responsible, good man, got up, would go to work, take care of his wife and family. He could be a chop breaker at times, and he could be a little too, I feel, rigid in his discipline when we were younger. But, he was also brought up in that type of an atmosphere. So sometimes, the apple doesn't fall from the tree. And this woman who came from the loving family, her family presently, she has a good husband, she has loving children. There was no horror story. And most of the sessions, I will admit, that do come to me are what I would call horror stories. So to hear something like that is always a breath of fresh air. Because I can remember when that first started happening, when I started doing sessions publicly, and you get that impression somebody grew up in, so to speak, what I call a Meet Me in St. Louis home, or a Leave It to Beaver home. And I can remember I would feel like, almost like this part of my brain would tell me that it was an illusion, that it wasn't reality, it wasn't real. That type of thing only existed on television in the 1960s. And I've had to kind of, I guess, not in a difficult way, but I've had to learn to train my brain to say, well, some people did come from very embracing, loving homes. I remember I had a father from the hereafter say to me one time, who had a very loving wife and children and that. And I remember I kept thinking in my mind, oh, this sounds like a load of horse manure to me. And he didn't get nasty with me, but he did get firm with me and said to me, not everybody grew up in a dysfunctional home. And he says, yeah, somebody could say what's coming out of that, of what they're saying, is very, they could say it's very general or run-of-the-mill, but I never realized their loved ones coming through, it's a joy for them to be able to reach out back to the loved ones here and rekindle those joyful memories for their benefit over there, as well as for their loved ones here, just as much as it's equally important for the soul who is an SOB here to reach out and try to close that ugly gap or trauma that's been left behind, to try to, help maybe his child to heal or his wife to heal or something. There are people too who have come through from the hereafter that were say a man very abusive to his wife. And he comes right out and says to me, she's glad I'm dead. And I'll say it to her. I'll say, your husband says, you're glad he's dead. And they kind of look at me like they don't know how to react. And I said, look, if that's how you feel, that's how you feel. They respect your feelings and realize that not everything all the time is rosy. And no matter what, it's up to us here and there to learn it for ourselves. You don't want to learn it there, no one's going to break your arm. Any more than you don't want to learn it here, you're not going to have your arm broken either. And I remember when I was, a youngster, and we'd go to Mass during the summer, and there was, no air conditioners in the church at that time. And I remember, because we always had to wear, white starched shirt and tie. We had to dress properly. And I remember complaining to my mother that, it was too hot. She'd always say to me, "We'll offer it up for the souls in purgatory." But then one day when I said that, the soul said, "If you are doing that, and this is not to endorse any type of particular religious belief, I'm just sharing from how I was raised." And they would say, if you're offering up for the souls in purgatory, you're offering it up for yourself and those here on the earth, because they say that we are the souls in purgatory. And I never, for some people it's hell, but I never really thought that, because what is purgatory? But the proving ground, or the way station between this dimension and the next one that we eventually go to. Now, I think I should be, downright honest with people viewing right now. I mean, if I pass on tomorrow and just go into nothingness, it's not going to break my heart. I'm not going to be disappointed. I'll just go into nothingness, and that's the end of it. But until that officially happens, which I don't think it's going to at this time of my life, I do feel I will be going someplace. We are reunited with loved ones that have passed on. So I never want to, how I feel is how I feel. Somebody doesn't like it, well, that's the name of the game. But I don't want people to ever lose a sense of hope or joyful expectation of eventually going there and being reunited with those we love, including pets. Because remember, I always feel the same divine presence or essence that breathed life into us has also breathed life into them. Yes, you hear my clock chiming in the background. So it's something to take into consideration. I've always looked upon animals as a pure heart with four legs. And, I've spoken to people who are not people. They're animal people. And there's nothing wrong with that either. I've talked to souls over there who have gone over and have, of their own choice, taken on a job, so to speak, where, they look out for animals here on the earth and also over there, and they couldn't be happier. And another subject I'm a little touchy about is when someone commits suicide. And the reason I'm touchy about it is because most organized religion have conditioned us that that's, a dreadful sin, and, those souls are sent to hell or a place of punishment. I think those souls were having a hard enough time here to begin with. So to think that after they take their own life, they're sent to some place where that agony continues wouldn't really help me to get much respect for the hereafter. A couple had come to me not that long ago where their son admitted he had taken his own life, and the father had been brought up in the Catholic faith, and he had gone to the priest, and he brought that to the priest, and the priest told him his son was burning in purgatory. Now, that doesn't sound very Christ-like to me, or spiritual to me. This is certainly not an encouragement for anybody to consider taking their own lives. But we have to be sympathetic to the fact that sometimes people reach their wits' end here. Most of the time when someone takes their own life, they have suffered here from depression and anxiety. And I see those things as illnesses. And can they kill you? You damn right they can. Because they can oppress you to the point where you just don't know what else to do. But I would always encourage someone to still let honor keep you here, to really do the best you can to be a survivor. There are people that have passed on that might have been in a state or a country where euthanasia is allowed. I have no problem with that. I know 60 people just threw their phones out the window. But I firmly believe that it should be the law, that I should be able to put into my will, as much as I have a health proxy, it says do not resuscitate, that I should also have the right to put in my will that if something ever happens to me where I cannot function as a normal, independent person, yes, I want, my loved ones to be around me, say au revoir, and let the doctor stick the needle in my arm. I mean, we do it to we're more merciful to our pets. I mean, one of my pets I had put to sleep not too long ago, as I said to the doctor, I am not going to put, they were giving me suggestions of what could be done to maybe help him, but there were no guarantees. I said, I am not going to put the cat through something I wouldn't want myself to be put through. So with that, I held him close, said goodbye, told him I'd see him again someday, and yet, told him to go home, spiritually, and I have seen him. And the doctor injected him. But I could never fully comprehend why, we're so loving to our pets like that, as heart-wrenching as that decision can be. So people that have passed on where euthanasia is permitted, they come through. I haven't heard anybody complain yet that they passed on by euthanasia. They are glad that they did, because it ended their suffering, not only for them, but also for their loved ones. As much as, again, it's a heartbreaking experience. Nobody whistles Dixie. No matter what the bottom line is, you still want your loved ones here physically. I was on eBay the other day, and I used to buy my aunt who passed away last year. She was 91. And I used to buy her cute little pieces of jewelry or her scarf or something. And I came across a piece on eBay, and I said, I should put this on my watch list and buy this for Aunt Teresa. And it hit me. I was like, oh, she's not here anymore. And bottom line is, I wish she was. Not only to do a sweet and joyful thing like that, not only made her feel great, but it made me feel great. So the bottom line will always be, no matter who you've lost that you're close to, a husband, a wife, a child, a brother, a sister, a mother, a father, you're still going to want them here physically. And that is never going to change. And they've told me it is all right to feel that way. And I like the fact that, the souls come through and try to make sure that you, as the survivor here, know that you never failed them. Because as they've told me, there is no such thing as failure. They say change the word to experience. You have the skeptic out there who will say, all this is horse manure. I have my days I don't know what to make of it. But something definitely is happening. And until it can be proven to me scientifically and precisely and accurately that it's not what at this time I think it is, you know, I'm not going to say float a horse manure just to make, you know, the skeptic or cynic or whatever feel better. You know, I would not consider myself a religious person, a spiritual person, yes. I still have, you know, my own personal saints and individuals that I would, you know, pray for and pray to. Whether they're out there or not the point. It makes me feel good, and if it makes them feel good over there, what's wrong with it? Because again, I've often thought about this. Heads or tails, you win. One or two things are going to happen when you come to the transition we call death. Either, number one, you're going to go into nothingness and forget, you know, your entire life and who made an impression, who you were close to, and whatever. Or number two, you're going to go to a place that's peaceful and joyful and be reunited with those you love, including pets. And so as far as I'm concerned, heads or tails, you win. It's one or the other. And we're all going to find out someday.